Well, hello there. My name is Brian Holmes, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this informational video. Just a little while back, we were in Colorado with a group of leaders, and it was kind of a retreat and a time to get together and just fellowship and dream and talk about the future and what we would be doing 6 months from now, 1 year from now. And it was a remarkable time together. At this event, we had the great pleasure of having two doctors with us, specifically sharing with us their perspective, their experience, their expertise on what we have with the Phix product. Between these two gentlemen, they have over 70 years in pharmacy and in functional medicine. And it was quite remarkable for us to literally sit around the table and listen to them share with us how the human body works, how each body is uniquely different and responds differently to different things, and specifically how this particular element, this extract, interfaces with the human body and the benefits that so many people are experiencing and why. And so we really felt like it would be great for you to experience this with us via the video. And so we're going to go here in just a moment to view that. I want to tell you up front, nowhere in this video are you going to hear claims being made. We don't make any claims regarding this product. We don't know how each person will respond to it. What we do know is that everyone responds a little bit differently, but also we know that we're hearing from hundreds of people in just a short space of time of tremendous results, incredible things that are happening for them as a result of consuming this particular product. So we're making no claims. We encourage you to seek the advice of your own physician or medical professional. And certainly we want you to know that your results may vary. But with that said, I know that if you hear the same thing we heard, you're going to be quite impressed with the potential of what this could mean for you, not only for your own benefit and your health, but if you see the vision that we see for you to go out and share this with thousands upon thousands of people and really have an impact to change a lot of people's lives. So let's go right now as Byron Schrag, Jim Denzine, and Terry Camp host our guest, the great doctors. So we hope you enjoy this.
We are excited that you tuned in. We've got a really special little session here that you're going to want to take some notes on, and there's probably some really big words that are going to be said, but all of you, those big words aren't coming from me, I'll guarantee you that, but our two guests are going to definitely talk about some stuff. But many of you are trying to understand, what is this Phix product and why does it work? And some are getting crazy fun results quickly, and some it takes a little bit. And, we're going to discuss some of these things of what is it really doing? Because, when a new product like this comes into the marketplace, one that's not existed, there's research that's been 70 years in the making, but nobody could bring it to the market. And now we have it in the market, and it's changing paradigms. It's shifting people's mindsets. It's creating tools for doctors like we have here that they didn't have at their fingertips before to solve problems, which is really powerful. So between Terry and Jim and I, we're just going to have some conversations there with Dr. Phil and Dr. Ben, and these guys are the experts. They spent their entire life understanding stuff like this and their careers, and so I would get some paper. I'd write some stuff down. You probably want to watch this multiple number of times. So with that, I think I'll let Dr. Ben start. He's going to introduce himself. He's got a long resume just like Dr. Phil over here, and we're just blessed that these guys are, here with us, but also they're very excited about, bringing this to the masses. So Dr. Ben?
Thanks. Dr. Ben Bowers, Wichita, Kansas. Started off as a chiropractor first. Been in healthcare about 35, 38 years. Then went into functional medicine. We did a lot of blood analysis, wrote a lot of papers on that, did a lot of research. Got into DNA for a lot of reasons. Got into epigenetics, and pretty much that's where I live now. It's between functional medicine and epigenetics. Really, we're trying to find out what functions or dysfunctions bodies have. We've all had different episodes of sickness, illness, or disease. Know people who have. And why do some people get something and other people don't? So that's one of the things we try to find. And as we start looking at this aspect of what we're looking at with the Phix or the Adaphyte, we've known about hops and hops flower, well, thousands of years actually, but really probably in the last 70 to 100 years or more, we've known the hops flower is a very unique product. We know that our Creator, our God, made it for certain reasons, and so a lot of people in healthcare have used that product for multiple different things. And as Byron just brought up, some of the researchers who've done back in the 40s and 50s, they isolated some pretty cool things about it. And so a lot of the more alternative type healthcare practitioners have looked at that and utilized that over all these years to do something very unique. And we've had some really decent, good results. So it was just another tool in our toolbox until this product came out. And I got real excited about it with some of the research, but I'm going to turn to Dr. Phil and let him introduce himself, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Ben, and thank you guys. We appreciate this opportunity. I'm Dr. Phil Carson from Tupelo, Mississippi, doctor of pharmacy. And like Dr. Ben, I've been at this for a lot of years, 39 to be exact. Wow. And it's been exciting to see all the changes take place over my 39 years in healthcare. And I've changed a lot myself. I started out as a traditional pharmacist, and because of my own health issues, I transitioned into wellness and functional medicine like Dr. Ben, and that's what I do today. I love helping people get to the root cause of their health problems and find the answers that they've been sometimes searching for years. And when something new like Phix comes along, that I see multiple studies done on that have made a tremendous difference in individual lives. There's been animal studies done, there's been human studies done. I'm impressed by what I've seen, and I'm impressed by things I'm seeing already with this hops product called matured hops extract. It's very unique, and like Dr. Ben mentioned, it's something that's been around and been studied for a long time, the hops plant. But we got a unique extract here that I'm excited about, and seeing some amazing things happen in people's lives. Because I think Dr. Ben and I are a lot alike in that we love people, we love to help people, and we love seeing people's lives change for the better.
Awesome. Cool. So, what makes this work? So, you hear these words that are sensors and fancy things for nerves. I mean, all these things are way above my pay grade, but I hear you guys talk about it. And what is it actually doing that creates the magic? All right, if you will. And I think if people can understand what it does, then they start sorting out like, okay, this makes sense. And then, that different things happen to their body as a result, because everybody's different the way it turns stuff on. So it's really a unique thing on what's happening. And then maybe let's talk about that. And then let's talk about the difference between, what fat loss and the scale and some of these kind of things we can dive into. And I'm sure Jim and Terry got some things. And so.
Well, the interesting about bitters, and we know bitters have been in alcoholic products for decades and millennia probably even. And so the concept originally on why they use hops in alcoholic beverages was to open up certain receptors. So we have to stop and ask, well, what does a bitter do if we consume it? I think for me, when I look at this, God designed it so that, think about, thousands of years ago, whatever, when we didn't have processed food, and you'd be out in the woods and you'd see a berry or something and you'd eat that berry. Well, God put within the tongue itself, first of all, these receptors that says, wait a minute, this is not normal. This potentially has a poisonous effect or a detrimental effect to our life. And so you would taste that and spit it out if it was too bitter, right? So once it regulates into the brain, then a process within a couple different terms we talked about is the acetyl-CoA and the salivary amylase inside your mouth, which these are just your juices if you think about saliva. All right, they're sending signals to the brain. Is this okay to swallow or not? Right. Mm-hmm. So if it overrides that ability to say, yes, it's safe to swallow, and you swallow, then all the way down the pipe that you're swallowing, all these receptors are continuing to send signals to the brain that says, yep, it's good. Oh, there's a problem. Oh, there's a problem. So the further it goes down, the more it starts breaking these products, or this fruit in this example is breaking it down even more. So by the time it gets to the stomach, now the body has to go, all right, I'm going to open up all these receptors so I can analyze what we just swallowed. And if we look at what we just swallowed, it says, okay, good enough to process on through, or not quite good enough, let's pause it, and let's stop everything till we can analyze what it is, and then let's communicate back to the brain what we have just swallowed, and it's now in the stomach to be metabolized or digested. So once that bitter receptor turns on, 3 major factors start to be employed. One is the slowing down of everything. Number 2 is upregulating the immune system so it knows whether or not it needs to go after and attack or kill something. And then number 3 is to set a protective barrier around the system, or to be able to utilize breaking down that bitter thing, right? So once that signal turns and comes back up through and hits the vagal nerve, it goes back down and hits a certain send back to the stomach, says, okay, we understand what it is. Now let's start processing it. Because now there's only one option you really have. If you don't break it down, you vomit it back up, right? And so if it's perceived that it's doable or manageable, now we're going to take down the process. So that's one of the key things I look at in the bitter receptors. It turns systems on to evaluate what that is, right? Now there's another whole part of enzymes, and Doc, if you want to jump in on there on cholecystic kinase or anything else that you want to bring up, or signal processing. And I like the isoalpha acids out of the MHA, the mature hops extract, because that is something that we turn a lot of things in to start utilizing how that's going to get processed. You want to add to that? Or?
Yeah. Well, what's happening here with these bitter acids, peptide hormone called CCK or cholecystokinin is being stimulated to be released. And when I look at all these studies, that's a primary factor there, the release of this particular hormone, peptide, that is extremely important in the digestive process in our bodies. And the CCK, cholecystokinin, has multiple functions in the digestive process in what it does. And, the other thing too, I'll throw this in real quick. In some of the studies I've looked at, there are people who actually are deficient in this particular hormone. They don't have enough. Their body doesn't produce enough. And I see this particular product really helping that person, probably more so than one who can produce sufficient amounts of CCK. But the activation and stimulation of this hormone peptide, what I love about it, because one of the things that actually pushed me into wellness and functional medicine years ago was digestive issues that I had. And so, I got really excited when I saw what all this does and the potential for this, because it stimulates, for one thing, it stimulates bile production from the gallbladder. Bile is needed to break down fat primarily, but it also breaks down protein and it plays some very important roles in our digestive process. And then it also stimulates the pancreas to produce all of these digestive enzymes that are extremely important for breaking down every type of food. Multiple enzymes. You mentioned one amylase. Right. But there are multiple enzymes that are produced by the pancreas. They're extremely important. Of course, the pancreas is a key organ, gland, whatever you want to call it, in diabetes as well, in controlling blood sugar.
So there's 2 master hormones in there that you're referencing, the insulin, right?
Yeah.
And there's glucagon, which is another master hormone.
Yeah.
And so we have the sugar side, carbohydrates, whether simple or complex. And now we have the protein-protein bond and the protein-fat bond and fat-fat bond that the glucagon helps us do. So looking which one comes into the pipe, that's the body reading all these mechanisms, so it knows which way to turn on what part of the body to make that work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, that's right.
And it's interesting because you're talking about hormones, and when we talk about hormones, between the mouth and the stomach are 5 different hormones. Now, we're not even talking about digestibility issues per se, except they control it. So a master hormone is called gastrin, is the one that upregulates the hydrochloric acid, which helps you break down all those substrates inside the stomach. Mm-hmm. And then the opposing end of that side then is what's called somatoinhibitor hormone, which shuts the process down. And it's interesting that when we talk about the top of the stomach, so we'll talk about the cardiantrum, and then we talk about a megan boss, the body, and then pyloric antrum, that's where your bitter receptors are reading stuff that's happening inside the stomach. So those of us who are old, remember the old wash machines, used to do all this stuff. That's really kind of what's happening in your stomach. So you get a compressing going back and forth. So we start this, and then we get a rotational fact. So now you're taking all these food and you're intermingling all these enzymes, all these digestive enzymes.
Yeah.
So now that's going to send another signal then back down into where you're talking about in the liver and the gallbladder. And that's going to send another signal back up through the vagal nerve again to come back down and says, okay, we understand what we have in here now, but we have some units in here that need a little extra help. And that extra help means that I'm going to go turn on another system, and I'm going to tell that system I need quick energy to make all this happen. So I tell people all the time, and if I say some things that are offensive, please don't be offended in this, but we look at people who are overweight or obese, and by the way, that's over 70% of Americans right now in those two categories. And we look at that and we go, why? As functional medicine docs, we have that big 2-year-old question, why? And we say to our clients and our patients all the time, why is your body presenting this way? Because it's doing its best. Our God-given ability, what we call the innate ability, is to try to change what you're feeding it and live. The body wants to live. So every which way you can pull some type of building block or energy out of what you gave it, it's going to try to utilize that. If it cannot process it, the body says, well, thank you, but that doesn't do anything for me. Can you please move that out of the way and bring more in? So where does out of the way go? And I ask this of clients and patients all the time. They go, well, don't you just excrete it, get rid of it? I go, no, you missed one step. It can't break it down.
Yeah. So it stores it.
Bingo. It says, I got a certain cell over here that I can fill up that cell. It's called an adipocyte. We call those fat cells. And inside that cell, which we know now is a hormone-regulated organic system, it can take a day, a week, a month to break that down inside that cell, right? And the problem with that is if you keep pushing it in there, another hormone gets upregulated back through that system that he was talking about, through the liver and gallbladder up to the vagal nerve, and it says, okay, one of two things have happened. I either got satiated, right? I feel full, or I don't have enough energy. I can't pull energy out what you gave me, so I'm going to turn another hormone on called ghrelin. And ghrelin says, you have a storage facility problem? Yeah. I have a solution. I will expand that cell 10 times.
There it is.
And when you keep doing that, it says, okay, you have another problem. I can now expand it 100 times. Wow. Yeah. And it goes one more time. It can expand one cell to 1,000 times its size. Wow. Yeah. So when we say you don't break things down, the body says, I got to put it somewhere. There's only 4 ways out of this body. You defecate, a bowel movement, 1 to 3 times a day. You urinate 5 to 8 times a day. You sweat out 1,000 times a day. And you breathe out 20,000 plus times a day. If you can't break it down, you can't get it out, you have a storage facility issue. Yeah. Now, what's unique about that is what this hops, or what we now term as an adophyte, and there's 3 excipients that have been pulled out of hops flour. This third one, this adophyte, is a very unique thing that we're the only ones that have. Nobody else has done this. And so we have found something that is so unique that it now does a different system. It says, I've closed off the stomach, I've turned all my sensors on, I need energy to process this. Mm-hmm. So what the beta receptors do is they send a signal over to something that's called the BAT, the brown adipose tissue. And the brown adipose tissue is a protective mechanism, right? So what it says is, I want to take and conserve and preserve, but I need an additional energy to do that. So I'm going to go into the adipocyte, the fat cell, and we call that the WAT, W-A-T, the white adipose tissue. And by the way, it's everywhere in the body, including around the brain, although there's more brown fat in the brain. And your brown adipose tissue actually protects all your organs. Yeah. So when it says, I need quick energy, it does one of 3 things. It's either going to burn a sugar, it's going to burn a protein, it's going to burn a fat. Here's where we run into a problem. Traditionally in the body, you'll burn down a sugar in seconds to a minute. Right? That's why when people go eat sugar, they get a rush, and we call it sugar alcoholism, and it drops their blood sugar in 15 to 20 minutes. And so the longer they do that, the more jacked up or the more energy they get, but it's bad. And what's bad about sugar? Type 3 diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's. Yeah. And we, in our years, have seen so much of that. So now the body says, okay, well, it takes seconds to a minute to break down sugar. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to break down a protein. And that's not the protein in your stomach. That's the protein in your muscle, right? So in the muscle, we have another type of white adipose tissue, and that's called MAT, M-A-T, or muscle adipose tissue. And when we work out and go do all this stuff, that's what breaks down for quick energy of the muscle, right? So think about people who are very athletic, and let's just pick runners just for example, because a long-term runner gets very lean muscle because they're burning the MAT.
Yeah.
But what are they not burning? There's another type of fat that we talk about, and that's called visceral adipose tissue. And just think between your chest and your thighs. You know, call them love handles, call it, you know, furniture disease, my chest on my drawers, you know, call it whatever you want to call it. But that is the hardest fat to break down.
Yeah.
And the reason it's the hardest fat is the body says, I am a body of fat. I need to conserve as much fat as I can. That's why digestively it takes 3 to 5 hours to break down a fat. Now, what this Adify does, this says, I need energy now, and I need the closest level or the closest area that I have a problem with. And it will turn to the white adipose tissue. And I'm going to put it in a simple term. Let's say you have a blood-related issue. It's going to pull it out of your thighs. Everybody knows what cellulite is in the thighs, right? If you have an organ dysfunction, it's going to pull it from either the chest or above the belly button. If you have a hormonal dysfunction, it's going to pull even above the chest, through the chest, down to above the belly. And if you have a bowel dysfunction, it's going to pull below the belly and pull that area down there. If you're male and you have a testosterone issue, if you're female and you have an estrogen dominance issue, it'll pull from the hip and the low belly area. So when we look at what this thing does, this Adaphyte that's in this Phix, it recognizes your own dysfunction.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it recognizes the easiest path to go initiate or activate the burn signal. We call that thermogenesis, right?
Right.
And it activates where it needs to burn it first, right? And once you burn that in that area, you're going to get some pretty unique results, as we've seen with our clients or patients, everything's there. However, it does not go after the real issue, which is the dysfunction that's been occurring for years that have allowed all that stored fat to show up.
Yeah.
Okay? And what the body's going to do is going to try to find a way to get the easy battles fixed so it can build up an army to go after the bigger problem. So what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know what point he's making there is fantastic. I think about when you talk about going after those particular areas, the areas of most need. It's like an adaptogen. You know, we have multiple adaptogenic herbs that are available to us that can help correct imbalances and problems in different areas of our body, and adapt to, so to speak, where it's needed, where we need it most, and what we need it most for. And so I think this is a very unique property of Adaptogenic to be able to do that and perform like an adaptogen, and being able to attack those, so to speak, those particular areas where it's needed most. And with the fat burning process that you're talking about with the thermogenesis, that's something that I think has been studied for a long time. Something I've looked into quite a bit myself. And there are specific ways to help stimulate thermogenesis within the body, but they're not fun to do.
Yeah, like an ice bath.
Cold water plunges. Yeah. And like sprinting. Too is another. We talk about the running. And sprinting is one thing that helps turn on the brown fat, burn up that visceral fat. But how many people especially our age, that are sprinting every day? Yeah, right. We're not, and that's something that. But we can do it. Some people can do it. They have the physical ability to be able to do that, and it can certainly help. But those things are not things that people are typically going to do, and not so much fun. So to have something that can work as effectively as these uncomfortable, unfun things to do is pretty powerful.
For sure.
So I just want to, so Jim mentioned something on this topic, a good analogy to what you guys are talking about happening in the body, the debt reduction thing.
Right.
Can you just explain what that is? Because these guys both agreed that that's a great way to look at what it is that's happening in the body.
Right, and to add to that or interject is so the concept, so we're getting testimonials coming in, right? So TK's testimonial might be a different result than mine, right? Some are turning in reports of the scale, and we'll come back to that here in a minute. Others inches, right? We're seeing these pictures come in, and you referenced how the body works. So go to the debt reduction example where the concept is simple. Pay off the little bills, get rid of those high interest rates, and then you compound that, right? And so you take, this money and now this money to pay off this one. And so you reference the body almost like it's parlaying. I don't know if that's the right word. Right, but you're adding to that process in an accelerated fashion. So maybe part B to that would be if I watch Terry's results and I think, okay, I took the same product, right? I took Phix. I should have the same exact result Terry has, but my body, I think you said there's like 96 different body types. So my body might be dealing with completely different issues. So I can't compare my results to him. I'm running my own race per se. So maybe speak to that all.
It's kind of like turning a key on and starting an engine, and then it goes to the part that's needed to be fixed first. Right. No pun intended, by the way.
Yeah,
right. All right. And it fixes that first, and then it builds that to say, okay, let's go after the next thing to fix and the next thing to fix. So this is why we're seeing a lot of different people saying that, wow, this has really done X, Y, Z, whatever that is. I mean, I'm not here to make any claims of anything, but this is a very unique thing that's happening, even though taking the energy for everything from the fat to create the results. So the fat might come off here or here or here or here, and it's based on the kind of problem that you have that really needs fixed.
So let's marry these two things together here real quick for a second. I ask patients, clients all the time, why do we eat? They go, you silly doctor. We eat because we're hungry. Okay, that's true, but why are you hungry? Think of a car and your gas gauge, you're getting low. What are you low of? Fuel. So we eat for fuel. And when we look at all the substrates, there's only 4 types, by the way. There's minerals, which we hardly ever talk about very often. There's carbohydrates, there's fats, and there's proteins. Those are the 4 things that the body will take and convert to a fuel. So how many fuels do we need? We need at least 3 categories of fuel. And so this is the way we discuss it. You eat for now energy. It's the energy we're all burning now. And every time you eat, your body says, thank you, but I need to save some for later. Right? And that save for later is what we call repair energy. And that only occurs while you're asleep. Right? The last category of energy is what we refer to as supply energy. And supply energy has to supply 2 major categories. Number 1, we call them the firemen. Why? Firemen are needed to put out a fire. What do we call a fire in the body? Inflammation. Right? Number 2, the second category of supply is to what we call our soldiers or our armies or our immune system. 5 major categories. Think of the military. We have the Navy, the Army, the SEALs, the Air Force, the Marines, whatever. They all have a very unique and specific job that they do. So when you have fuel, your body says a little goes here, a little goes here, a little goes there. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because now we're going to marry these 2 together. So when you are on fire, you have an inflammatory reaction going on in your body, and most people think of that as trauma, but they forget just coming up here to the mountains and having low oxygen is an inflammatory reaction. And so when the firemen get worn out, think of like a forest fire, you bring in what? You bring in the National Guard, you bring in the military to help put out that fire. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring the immune system in to help the firemen put out your fire. Well, if you're constantly producing a fire, they're constantly on call or on job, which means now you are weakening your supply energy, you're weakening your reactivity or your ability to respond, and now you're getting down to very low reserves. So now we come back to the debt reduction center. So what the body is going to do is go, I need to build this little reserve here, I need to build a little reserve here, a little reserve here. And so it puts out the little fires the best that it can, so that it's allowing itself to build and go out and recruit more soldiers and more firemen to train them to start handling the bigger cases or the bigger dysfunctions in the body. And so when we look at what the Adaptogenic does two major things. Number one, it says, I'm going to slow things down and I'm going to make sure I handle this bitter issue. Now, we're going to put the word alcohol in here for just a moment when I come back to that. But on the other side of that, it's going to put that into a slowdown mechanism. It's going to go, okay, now I need to speed something up to get me that energy. And so the body looks around and says, where do I have dormant energy just laying around? White adipose tissue.
White adipose
tissue. So wherever the greatest issue of dysfunction is, it's going to start saying, come here, I'm going to break you down immediately. And so what normally take 3 to 5 hours, they'll do in 3 to 5 seconds or 30 to 50 seconds. It's going to happen very quick. Wow. And now you're going to go right back into the system and go, let me feed my firemen, let me feed my soldiers, let me give mine energy, and let me save some reserve so that I can repair while I'm sleeping. It's amazing. Dr. Field, got something else to add to that?
No, that, I mean, you I don't need to add anything to that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I just in general conversations with both of you, off the record, I heard say things like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is a really big deal. Like, you have patients, you have people you consult. This is like a holy grail type thing, because we didn't have access to this element or this product, this Adaptogenic thing, right? And now we're delivering it, obviously, with the Phix brand. Maybe just speak generically to that, how you feel about it. Not that it's an endorsement per se, but just how you view it and why you're sitting here right now.
I feel you're starting.
Yeah. Well, I deal with people every day, every week that are struggling, with their weight, and they have a desire to lose weight. They have a desire to reduce body fat, but also people that are struggling with specific disease that their obesity or their overweight, too much body fat has caused, and particularly the visceral fat. And that's one of the things that really excited me when I first heard about Adaptogenic and matured hops extract, is that it's focus on visceral fat and how it helps to burn up that particular form of fat. Because I've worked with several people in recent years that struggle with that and in particular something called fatty liver disease, which we are seeing, or let me say this, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Right. Because we know alcohol and overconsumption of alcohol destroys the liver. But there are so many people being diagnosed today with this disease called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And they don't drink at all. Some of them don't. Some of them drink occasionally, but yet they've got fatty liver disease in the wine. It's that buildup of that visceral fat, too much visceral fat. And to have something that can effectively help a person break that fat down, eliminate or reduce that fat. It's tremendous. I look at people's body fat percentages all the time, and I see people with very high levels of visceral fat in their body. Ideally, it should be below 10. So if anybody's doing a body fat analysis, or you go get one done, InBody, or you've got a scale like I do that measures that, that's something you want to keep in mind. If you got visceral fat levels way above 10, then you need to be making some changes. You need to be doing something.
So to clarify, visceral fat different from subcutaneous, different from brown adipose, what are we talking about right
Correct.
now?
Yeah, that is, it's the most stored fat that becomes a problem. So let me inject, if I can, Dr. Field, real quick. I tell people, my patients, clients, whatever, all the time, I go, we really are a body of fat. And you guys heard me talk about it here. But I go, why do I say we're a body of fat? All right? And why does the body want to store fat and keep fat? You can't store proteins. You can't store sugars. So why does the body select to say, I want to store as much fat as I can? When I look at the brain and the spinal cord, so we talk about the brain and what the CNS, central nervous system, it's 60% fat. There are, depending upon how many you want to count once or twice, there's 5 to 7 what we call peripheral nervous systems. They are 80 to 85% fat. Now, if we get into the endocrine system, which is hormone regulation, 600 hormones in the body, the human body, they are over 90% fat. There's 4 different what we call mainframes that they build off of, and they are 90% fat. There are then 8 master neurotransmitters inside the brain that control the entirety of the body, and very uniquely, the endocrine system, we call that the neuroendocrine system. And they are 92% fat. So the body wants fat. And every fat you give it, says, thank you, let's store it, thank you, let's store it, thank you, let's store it. And only breaks down what it needs. And the most that gets broken down is the MAT, the subcutaneous, that's the next, is the muscle adipose tissue. And then the SCAT, the subcutaneous adipose tissue, which is under your skin, right? Because those are what can be broken down. Now, when we look at the purpose of fat, I try to explain it this way, there's basically 4 categories of fat. We talk about short chain, medium chain, long chain, and essential chain fatty acids. The main, number one thing fat is needed for is those 600 hormones. Secondary to that, it's going to be those 8 master neurotransmitters. But beside that, it's needed for protection. It wants to protect its body. So think about a house that has a siding or bricks or some other, what do we call that stuff on the white on the outside?
Stucco.
Stucco, thank you. Or stucco on the outside, but then you have stud walls in between, and then you have sheetrock or something else on the inside. So that's what we call a bilipid layer, and every single cell has that. So it wants to store fat for protection. Now, we forget the fact that cholesterol is fat, by the way, and it's the main fat for those 600 hormones, but cholesterol is not really stored in the adipocytes, right? What gets stored is the extra short, medium, and long-chain fatty acids, and if they're there too long, they become rancid or toxic. And that's critical for what we see, because when we start breaking down visceral adipose tissue, I want to interrupt and give you a thing to think about. So it's January 1, we're going to set a New Year's resolution. We're going to go work out and lose weight. Most people who work out know that that's the worst time to go to the gym. But give them 2 to 3 weeks later, and all those people are gone. Why? When you start breaking down all that visceral adipose fat, and you start breaking down the toxins, you get sick. And what the body does, it says, oh, I've released all these poisons back into my system. I must immediately start doing 2 things. 1, retain more fat, and 2, retain more fluid. Now, we've all heard about this. You go on any type of specialty diet, the first thing you're losing is what? Water weight, 9 to 15 pounds. And most people do that in 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks. They go, woohoo, I'm down 15 pounds. And they go right back to life, and the body goes, oh, shame on you. You did me a wrong. I'm going to do you a wrong. I'm going to gain you 10 to 15% more retention than what you had before. And when we look at in America, the average adult gains from 3 to 5 pounds per year. Per year, that's the average. So give yourself 10 years, you gain 30 to 50 pounds if you are watching and monitoring that.
So just the fad diet idea is very unhealthy.
Very unhealthy, yeah.
All right. And so what's happening is we got this yo-yo, and they go, I'm going to try this diet and that diet, and what's happening is they're actually doing themselves a disservice because they can never maintain it long term.
Correct.
All right. You know, I could name a bunch of ones I'm thinking of, and I won't because you're thinking of them too. We all know them. We hear about them. Oh, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do that thing, and then a solution would be a snap a day that you could maintain.
Right.
And your body will react to this over time and fix, no pun intended.
I like it. I like the term that Dr. Phil said, that it's adaptogenic. There's another term I'll add to that. It's called potentiation, right? And the research on this product, right? The research on this product says for 12 to 16 weeks, it never lost its potentiation, its ability to do what it is doing. Yeah. Now, when I tell my clients or we come on, I'm going to start this, I'm asking for 3 to 6 months commitment. Because why? That fat accumulation did not happen in weeks, 16 weeks.
Right.
It probably happened over a decade. And I need the body to have the time to break, we call it selective prioritization, for it to break down what it chooses to fix first as it's trying to rebuild back up its reserves to be able to go after the bigger problems, whatever that dysfunction is, right? And he's right. When we talk about the endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph, 3 different body shapes, 96 different body types, every unique body has its way that it processes different things. Your experience, your life, your diet, your habits, your workout habits, all those things have an effect. Even environmental air that we breathe, all those things. Okay? So when I get in that phase and I start looking at this, I'm going, if I continue this fix and allow it to fix my body, but give the body its selective prioritization of its potentiation of the adaptogenic reaction in the body, it's going to fix itself.
So I just want to clarify one thing. You said the average human gains 3 to 5 pounds a year,
Correct.
which would be fantastic if I gained 3 to 5 pounds of muscle every year.
It's not muscle.
I'm guessing it's not muscle.
Correct.
Yeah. So just by in that process of accumulating fat, and I go back to the debt example because we could have different types of debt.
Correct.
And therefore a different plan. We're going to go after different types of debt first because we have different debt. Our bodies have different fat or debt accumulation, and so each body is going to go after something different first based on what it needs, and that might not show up on the scale per se because it's trying to fix things that are the other problems that are in the body that need fixing first, the most urgent thing first.
So we talk about tools of evaluation, right? Now in a physician's office, our clinics, we have a lot of different tools we've talked about that we can measure the BMI, the BFA, and we can actually watch what's happening in the body. What do we have as human beings or normal people? We have this little thing in the bathroom that we jokingly call it the monster in the bathroom. It's called a scale. And the scale has one use. What is your current weight? Right? And so when you start on a procedure, you're using that scale or that tool as a measuring device. And it's non-selective. In fact, we know the muscle and the bone weight weighs more than the fat weight. Right? So unless you're burning water, which has an equal weight of protein, or unless you're burning protein, you don't see the scale change very often or very fast. But what we do watch then is the measurements on the body, because the girth starts getting broken down, and we start seeing that selective prioritization on the body start pulling things out in different areas. If I go back to the runner again, the first thing's going to have to do a runner is they're going to bring the muscle adipose tissue, right? And what will happen to most of them? They'll keep that little belly pooch, right? And the reason is that it's reserved for protection to happen.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, Dr. Phil, when you have your clients, are they on for a month, or do you talk to them about 3 to 6 months, like Dr. Ben?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No matter what I'm doing with the patient, if I'm working with them and they got a particular issue that they're struggling with, I always say, look, you're not going to turn this around in a week or 2 or a month or whatever. You didn't get in this shape in that period of time. It's going to take time. Give me 3 months, 6 months, maybe even longer, before we can effectively turn things around for you. It's a process. It's what it is, and I try to help people understand, hey, this is going to be a process. But we want to monitor, we want to watch you closely, and we want you to observe and see and make notes. I encourage people to journal, to write things down so that they can see their progress through the process.
Yeah, I think the big deal here for us is, we just came across this, 13 weeks ago.
Yep.
We heard about, fat loss. And that's what we knew, and we were like, hey, this would be great. A lot of people want to lose fat, because nobody ever really wants to lose weight. They want to lose fat.
Yeah.
As you guys have joined and started to educate us in a lot of different ways. We've had naturopaths, other MDs that have all said the same thing. And I think it's now we're kind of understanding that the way I describe it, this is only my lay explanation, is that there are a lot of symptoms that come from excess visceral fat that happen in the body. If we can go help the excess visceral fat, we can help with a lot of the other symptoms that come from that, which is the root. But it's going to take months to potentially do that. And I think we were doing, maybe I was doing a disservice, even because all we knew was fat loss, and that's all we were talking about. But people need to really understand this is a health transformation thing that we're talking about right here. And the body, as God wired it, knows what's wrong with each body, and it will do what God has designed it to do with the right thing going in, given enough time.
We call that innate intelligence. So it's a God-given ability for the body to perceive what's happening to itself. And like, there's some people, clients, patients, what we'll talk about. I tell them, I really expect in the first 1 to 4 weeks you to gain weight. Why? Your body is going to have to retain more fluid as it's breaking down these fats, so it can figure out how to take the poison portion out, take it through the lymphatic system, break that down, and keep you safe and protected. But in the process, it will start mottling, right? And by mottling, it means it redesigns the body, and that is the girth changing that occurs. Right? And I love what Dr. Phil was talking about, because most of the people come to functional medicine doctors like us, they've been the normal route. And it's not worked. And they're sick and tired of being sick and tired of being fat and overweight and not having energy, strength, or stamina to do what they want to do. And they go, enough's enough. Let's find the causation. Let's find some solutions. And if it takes 1 to 3 years of my life, so be it. Because 1 to 3 years of my life is going to happen anyway. And I might as well get healthy in that same time instead of perpetuating the problem down that path right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems pretty simple to do. Every day for a couple of years.
It is.
Yep, snap your fat off, baby.
But if you go back to the innate intelligence, you're turning on systems that have been dysfunctional. And that's what functional medicine is. What is dysfunctional, and what tools or what adjuncts do we need to turn the God-given ability back on to repair itself? We're not healing anything. This isn't healing anything. It's not. It's taking what God has given us. God created it. God put something in our body, says that unique thing will turn on this unique system, and let your own created innate intelligence figure out how to heal or correct your dysfunctional body.
The microcosm of that, to me, is food poisoning. Something bad goes in your body. What you were talking about recognizes it and it expels it. And that's like in a microcosm. That's in the micro sense. That's what we're talking about long term.
So this really was tested in the animal kingdom. Animals are very unique, that they'll come up and they'll eat a berry, they'll eat something, and you'll see our dogs. You throw something on the floor and they'll go, I don't eat that. Humans don't do that. We go, well, if I put enough sugar on it, maybe I can swallow it better. And that's exactly what addictive food supply is. Animal is smarter. And so what we saw in the animal studies that were done before they're done in human studies is the animal studies, it turned all those things on, and they didn't have those problems. All right, this higher intelligence needs a little bit more higher selective prioritization.
A little bit Doc's talking about with the innate abilities, because this is something I try to help people understand as well. That innate ability, our bodies are designed by God to stay in proper balance. Every system, every organ, every part of our bodies stay in proper balance. Is called homeostasis, fancy word for balance. I use all kinds of things to help restore that balance. And this is something that I see Adapti as being one of those things when it comes to people who have excessive amount of body fat that they need to reduce. I think what he's been talking about there and mentioning that innate ability of the body, and you're just helping the body, helping what God's designed to be able to do what it's supposed to do. When you give it things like that, and the nutrients, the food itself, we were talking about the minerals and the 3 macronutrients. I try to encourage people, no matter what you do, and these fad diets that come along that just mess people up, in my opinion. I tell people, you got to stop dieting and you got to learn to eat balance. You got to get those macronutrients every day. You got to get the right balance of those macronutrients. You got to get all those minerals and those nutrients, the right vitamins that you get from foods to keep everything in balance. And so I don't want people to even think that even using the product Phix is going to do it all by itself. You've got to feed your body the right foods at the same time.
One thing I would just, the studies also show that if there's some light exercise with this, it really makes a big impact. And we're talking, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but walking, is light exercise. We're not talking about, and it's something that you could do. So this, once again, is maintainable. I think in the space of being healthy, it's like, can you just maintain things long term instead of, we're a society of I go to college and then I cram for the test and you don't remember anything at all and you never can maintain that, But this is what's most exciting to me is this little thing right here. I can snap that 1 time or 2 times a day in a glass of water, or I could snap it straight in my mouth and it don't matter. Yeah. All right? And I can also go out and walk around the block 5 times. All right?
Or a treadmill or a bike. But we prefer you get outdoors and you do that as well. But and even if you do a high intensity, we don't want you doing anything high intensity that causes inflammatory issue. So we try to tell people between 9 to 15 minutes. That's a maximum amount of high intensity workout you should do. Because after that, it's what's called Wolff's Law. It starts turning on the inflammatory issues, right? And so we have to be careful of that inflammatory reaction. I like what Terry and Jim talked about in the debt aspect. So think about this. Accumulated debt didn't happen very rarely immediately. You start doing it, you start living beyond your means, you start carrying more balances, then all of a sudden you go, well, I need another credit card, you get another credit card, pretty soon you go for that, now you need a debt reduction loan, and so you start carrying that, now you got more credit card. That is fat accumulation in the body. And what you guys are saying here is that this is going to come in and imbalance the balance for a moment and go, I'm going to put all my focus and attention on cleaning these small wars up first, clean that up so now I have the power, the discipline, the resistance, the attitude to go after the big dysfunction. And that's life-changing. That's what makes dynamic impacts in our lives and the people we have the opportunity to serve.
I want to come back to one more thing when you talk time, 3 to 6 months. One of the problems we have because of what you just described is people looking for the immediate solution, right? Which is the fad diet, but literally thinking, I'm going to snap this in, I'm going to run to that scale, right? And that's exactly not what we're doing here in this interview. We're saying, hey,
I ask my patients or clients not to give them the scale for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Do the first one, but don't do it again for 2 to 4 weeks.
Take the measurements, though.
Right, do the measurements.
And where would you suggest the measurements go? Where would you guys suggest?
All right, so here's what most people think this is kind of crazy, but we measure from the head to the ankle. Now, why the head? Think about people who have brain fog. They have some form of issue with being able to think, processing. They have slow memory. That's swelling in the brain. And everybody thinks that the skull is it's a sealed unit. No, it changes. It adapts to pressure. So we actually measure the head. We've actually seen people having brain fog, having histories of strokes, having histories of dementia. It start reducing, or autoimmune diseases, other diseases of the head and brain as well. And all of a sudden, when we see those symptoms reducing, it's because the girth is reducing in the head as well. So we do the head, we do the neck, we do what's called the armpit or above the chest. Then in males and females both, we do the nipple area. Then we do below that, so we do below the chest or the breast. Then we'll do above the belly button, below the belly button, the widest points of the hips. Then we come down, we go 6 inches up on the arm, 3 inches down on the forearm on both sides. We do 9 inches up from the knee, we do the knee itself, and we do 6 inches down from the knee, and then we do the ankle. Now, why do I do so many measurements? Because the unique aspect of dysfunction in the body tells me where that fat is being stored, right? I get people go, oh, my furniture disease, oh, my back fat, oh, my hips that won't go down. And when we talk about those 3 types, endomorph, mesomorph, and ectomorph, we know there used to be terms we used to call the apple, the pear, and the shade, and all these other things. Now we call it the angle, the triangle, the inverted triangle, the ball, right, and then the lean pole, right? So we look at these different aspects of the body.
By watching those measurements where they change, we can almost predict with pretty good accuracy the dysfunction that's in the body. And we as a body don't know it mentally, right? And the scale certainly doesn't know it, right? It's just reading one avenue, one tool of what's happening in the body. But the measurements get very specific, and they tell us exactly how the body is adapting. And so when we talk about the adaptability of the body with this product over 3 to 6 months, multiple times those are going to change, right? As the body starts paying off those little debts Terry was talking about, and it starts coming up to a medium one, it may change and go back up. I may need more hormone regulatory effect up here once I get power behind me, and then when I fix that, it'll go back down again, right? So when I watch what happens to these bodies and I look at all these measurements, and I know that this is not an instant fix, right? This is a long-term fix. That the longer I do this, the more selective the body can start fixing all these minute things, and ultimately, majority of those symptoms. We can talk about 200 different symptoms that happen to the body off the statement you made, off of visceral adipose, rancid fatty acid tissue. And it changes them.
The good thing is I don't have to know any of this stuff. I just have to know how to do this. Just squirt it right in there and just have a little drink every day.
Drink.
And by the way,
fix my drink, baby. That's all I got to know. This is cool. This is really all of these super insightful because there's all these studies. This is something no one's ever seen before, and now you guys are fired up and excited because you know what it actually does. The good news is I don't have to know a dadgum bit of it other than I have to snap that in my drink, or I can snap it straight in my mouth, or whatever it is. And the other thing is if we look at the health side, it's phenomenal, but the opportunity to bring hope to people, to create financial resources in their life is crazy because we're bringing it to the game.
By the way, if you can't do it, get someone else to do it for you.